Hi guys, how's it going? How you doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today I'm doing another collection video. The title and the thumbnail should have told you which one it is, and I hope that you're here for it. For those of you new here, hi, my name is Donna. I'm a lover of all things high-end colorful beauty and self-care. I also work as a field business leader for Ulta Beauty, so I get a lot of education in my position, like to bring you that education. But ultimately, I'm just out here talking about makeup because I like to talk about makeup, and I'm sure that you do too, or you wouldn't be here. I'm hoping at the end of the day we can be friends and you'll want to subscribe before you go. But for now, let's roll into this collection video and I will see you at the end. I have well over 200 palettes. So strap in, grab a snack, a drink, whatever you need to have, because this is going to be a long ride. These palettes sitting in front of me right now are the palettes that are in my drawer. They're what I would call my mini palettes. For the most part, they're all like 9 pans of eyeshadow or less, but they're small and don't need a place in my shelf space. So I have to be honest with you, I don't know how many palettes are going to go in this, mostly because like this is my favorite part of my makeup collection is my palettes. So these don't get touched every single year. Some of them haven't been touched in over a year. I don't care. I know that that seems ridiculous, but I'm okay with that. Everything that I get rid of does go to a good home. So know that eventually, at some point, whether I'm using them or not, somebody else is going to get used out of them. So I'm going to move them and we're going to go palette by palette. This is the ColourPop Baroque palette. I love the palette like theming. I think it is beautiful, but this is what this palette looks like. It is a really pretty, you know, gray monochromatic type palette, and it does have like some really light tones and some really deep tones, and it swings a little bit on the like navy blue gray side, and then this one over here is kind of like a red tone. Really beautiful palette. This one is the Sugar Pill Fun Size palette. This one came to me straight from California. My friend Grace did pick this up for me in one of her Ulta locations over there in California because didn't have them in my Eastern Washington locations. I was wanting this. She saw it in one of her locations, picked it up. This is probably one of my favorite eyeshadow palettes to utilize to blend out some of my more adventurous looks. Winky Lux. This palette is probably my oldest palette in my collection. I mean, it still works well. You guys can see I have pan in a couple of the shadows there. They're really great shadows. The only ones I really don't like are these two here, but I like all the other ones. So if it were the opposite, if it was these two were the only ones I liked and I hated the rest, I might get rid of this palette. But I do love this palette. I do love majority of the shades in this palette, and they still work really well. The only reason why I know that is because I did have it in a deck of panning not that long ago and utilized every single shade. It's the Winky Lux Mermaid Kitten palette. And this one I think is probably the opposite of that, in that I don't love it quite as much. This is definitely a shimmer heavy palette. The only mattes in this palette are these two here, and I don't feel like those two shadows go with everything in this palette. I do think this one has some standout shades in it. I mean, those are really pretty. I'm gonna declutter this one. I am. I think that the shades that I do like in this palette, I probably have over and over again in my eyeshadow collection. This one I do think is a wee bit more unique than the other ones, but I could definitely let this go, give it away as a whole palette versus one that I've torn apart, and somebody will enjoy that. This is the Morphe 9P Petal Passion. This is a palette that I got in gratis last year, I do believe, and I love it. I love it so much. Like, I don't think I've ever said I love an eyeshadow palette from Morphe, but this one is a favorite in my collection. This is the Blitz Astral Quad. This one is Ritualistic Rose. It's all Blitz Astral shades, and therefore like 2 of them are a little bit more like glittery. This guy is going nowhere. But again, I have to say how much I despise this packaging that you have to hold on to, because otherwise you don't know what palette you have in your hot little hands. This one is the only palette that I have by Becca. This is the Pearl Glow Shimmering Eye Palette, and it has a really nice kind of like iridescence to the palette. This is what the palette looks like, and honestly, this one has been a palette that I could get rid of and probably not think twice about, except for these 6 middle shades here. They are so beautiful. I just can't get rid of this palette. It is, those 6 shades in there are so, so pretty. Now, if these 6 shades would come out, I would love it even more if it were just these 6 shades. And I know that Becca isn't a brand anymore, and that makes me actually kind of want to hold on to it more. And then this one is by Complex Culture. This one came to me in a BoxyCharm, and I was like, I immediately put it into my drawers that I utilize for items that I'm going to give away. Something in me decided you really should try that eyeshadow palette. I mean, it's real simple, but it's also really pretty. So I tried it, and sure enough, I love it so much. It's such a great eyeshadow palette. This is Reina Ribalde, and this came from my aunt. This is the Oaxaca palette. It's a 4-play wet dry eye color palette. I do think that I've held on to this long enough. I haven't picked it back up since I did a palette roulette on it. I do think I am going to declutter this palette. Then I have the Il Makiage Color Boss Squad in the Make Mauves colorway. Such a beautiful formula, such a beautiful like one and done kind of eyeshadow palette. Use of this palette made me want to pick up more by Il Makiage. And we have the Revolution Ultimate Nudes Medium Shadow Palette. I think these were supposed to be dupes of the Huda Beauty medium, light, fair, whatever palettes. And this is actually a really great palette. It's the first Revolution eyeshadow palette that I've ever used that I didn't get mad at myself for having in my collection. It is a palette that I didn't purchase though. I did get this in gratis. Then we have the 3 ABH Norvina Mini Pro Pigment palettes. I won't be getting rid of any of these, but we have the 1, 2, and the 3, and I think that they each like serve a purpose in my collection. I love this one specifically for like romantic pretty looks. I love this one specifically for like fall time looks. This one I think could be a good winter palette, so I won't be getting rid of any of those. I do like them. You can see that they're pretty used and abused. I use them often, so for one eyeshadow or another, I will be keeping those. And then I have all of these from Huda. And in the past, I have gotten rid of so many of my Huda palettes, my Huda Obsessions palette specifically, and all the ones that are left here I really, really love. I do love them so much more since they started making them in the hard plastic covers. I feel like they just last longer and are better. So I have Sapphire, Emerald, Coral, Ruby. This one is Love Fest, and this one is Wild Python. I do really truly love every single one of these. I do think that there's a slight bit of redundancy between this one and this one, as well as this one and this one, but like when I only grab like one of the palettes, I feel like the redundancy that exists as you're seeing them all together belong with the palette that is encompassing such redundancy, which means that I'm gonna keep them all because I do think that like this lime green in here and this lime green in here belong in both of those palettes. And I can't really pick and pull these palettes apart to create the perfect one, but I think that all of them in a nutshell are just beautiful palettes. I have used each one of them a lot, so I don't want to, you know, of course, get rid of things just to get rid of things, but I do think that these are my perfectly curated little Obsessions palettes that I couldn't imagine not having in my collection, so I will be keeping them all. I have 5 Natasha Denona and 2 Marc Jacobs, like minis, if you will. These aren't mini eyeshadows, but these are mini palettes. So these are 2 5 eyeshadow palettes. They're not like minis, right? Because they're much larger than that. But this is the Ayana palette, which is very cool toned and truly, truly a beautiful palette. Came to me in BoxyCharm, and I can't imagine not having it in my collection because it's just truly a beautiful on-the-go palette. And then this one is Peak, which is its perfect like warm tone counterpart. And then I also have Mini Retro, Mini Sunset, and Mini Xenon. And this one right here is probably my most used mini palette, to be honest. And then these two are just iconic and I can't get rid of them, and very, very well used. I take the minis out on the road with me. It is the easiest eyeshadow palette to travel with. And then these 2 Marc Jacobs palettes I won't be getting rid of just because, you know, Marc Jacobs doesn't exist anymore, and these are so beautiful. This is his Electric colorway. I think of it as like a New Year's Eve party kind of eyeshadow palette with that light pink, bright pink. It's got 3 shimmers and 4 mattes, and the 4 mattes are literally perfection. So we'll be getting rid of that. And this one is in Flamboyant. And again, it's just 7 eyeshadows, very cool tone, has a little bit of warmth to it though. This like taupey brown kind of leans a little bit green sometimes depending on what you put it with. It's just such a beautiful eyeshadow palette, so I won't be getting rid of either one of those either. I have 3 Lime Crime palettes. Venus Immortalis. I love this colorway. I love this palette. This palette glows in the dark. So this is the reason why, honestly, I fell in love with Lime Crime. Venus 3. If I got rid of any of them, it would be this one, because this one I did not love as much, but I will continue to hold on to that one as well. And then Prelude Chroma. Look at how beautiful this color story is. This is a shocking, surprising shadow that feels kind of like creamy in the pan and has this like beautiful like iridescence, like fairy light kind of thought process to it. Is such a beautiful color story. I need to pull this back out and use it again because I love Lime Crime. I have these 2 by Flower Beauty, and y'all, I think I'm gonna get rid of these because I mean, they're amazing, don't get me wrong, but they are so thick that I just cannot see. I don't love them. I don't love them at all. They create texture on my eyes that I didn't even know existed. I think that they would be perfect for somebody who has perfect eyes, somebody who is not aging, but these are not for me. And that makes me very sad. So I am going to declutter those. Then I have these 2 by Viseart. They are dark mattes. And then this one is Sultry. I really do want to pick up more palettes by Viseart. I love the Viseart formula. I'm not super fond of the Viseart like shimmers because they're more like satins, and I don't love satins, honestly. But the mattes are fantastic. Also, you can take the shadows out, you can put them into a magnetic pan. So I don't really have to house them in these, but these are their old palettes, and their new palettes are coming more like in this cardboard like kind of packaging. But I love these palettes by Viseart, so I won't be letting them go, and honestly want to pick up more. I have this one from NARS. It's my one and only eyeshadow palette from NARS. It is the Summer Unrated palette, and listen, I like this palette a whole lot. This is the first palette that I ever tried from NARS, and it makes me want more, but honestly, NARS comes out with like legitimately almost the same color story every single year. So I think one palette from NARS is probably enough palettes from NARS. And then this one is the Colored Rain Berry Cute palette. And I really quite like this palette. So I'll be holding on to this. And I have these two from Nabla. Having these two Nabla palettes in my life has showcased for me that I don't necessarily need more from Nabla. I think that I've got a good, you know, neutral palette from Nabla and a good color palette from Nabla. I don't 100% love their formula, so, and I don't 100% love how glittery like some of their shades are. They do irritate my eyes to some extent, but this is a beautiful powder blue and this is a beautiful deep brown, and oh my god, this shade right here is probably the best like chrome silver that I have in my collection, but I don't love this one, and it's a beautiful shadow. I am going to hold on to them because I do like them. I don't 100% love the formula of their eyeshadows, so I don't need to pick up more. This one is by Wayne Goss. This is the Luxury Eye Palette in Imperial Topaz. Not a favorite for me, but it is a beautiful palette. It's just very run-of-the-mill, very meh. I don't think that these palettes are worth the money. What I do like about them is that they do have giant pans so that you can use them with bigger brushes if you want to for like, you know, face brush purposes. But like every single one of his palettes, I believe, has a black in it. You don't need a black in every single eyeshadow palette. I don't love the formulation of the shimmer here because it reminds me a lot of like How Many Carats by Fenty, and it's way too glittery in my humble opinion. And 3 of these shades here are satin, and again, I just said how much I really truly don't love satin, and they're just too shimmery or too metallic, I guess, too shiny to put into a crease. So like literally you're stuck with this black as a matte and this brown as a matte, and the rest are shiny, and I don't 100% love that. I wish I had a different Wayne Goss palette, but for now I'll hold on to it because I do think that the formulation is beautiful, but I also think it's not worth the money. This Midas Cosmetics palette, this is the Artistry Palette Volume 1. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I do believe that this palette is like pastels kind of on crack. I do love this palette. I will hold on to this palette, and this like crazy yellow is such a beautiful like inner corner, bring some light to an eye look kind of yellow. It is probably the only yellow that I have in my collection that actually shows up on my eye look as a neon yellow. These two I will also be holding on to. These are old Pat McGrath eyeshadow palettes. This is the Eye Ecstasy Sublime, and then this one is the Eye Ecstasy Subversive. These are after she came out with like her first, you know, few Mothership palettes. She came out with these two, her first go at a 5-pan eyeshadow palette with just the shimmer shades in it. I love these so much. These were all I had from Pat McGrath for the longest time. And we have a little bit of color and we have a little bit of neutral, so I'm going to hold on to these as well. They're my most used Pat McGrath eyeshadow palettes. I really truly do love them so much. This one I will likely declutter. Not a huge fan of Urban Decay eyeshadows in the Naked formula. My sister got the half-baked one. I will give her the Smiley as well. It's just not individually unique enough for me to keep in my collection, and I know my sister will enjoy it. And this one I have from Kat Von D, and this is her Shade and Light Eye Contour Quad in Rust. I know it seems silly, but I really quite like this quad. I also really quite like the packaging of it. I wonder if I can tear it apart. Those are definitely magnetic. Here's the thing. I love this When I go out of town, sometimes I just want to take a small little palette with me. This is a great inner corner and brow bone and like all over the lid. This goes really, really great together for an all matte eyeshadow look. I do think I want to hold on to it, but we just discovered it is magnetic. So if I can get them out of here and we'll put them into a magnetic palette instead of having this palette. I mean, the packaging is pretty bulky for 4 pans of eyeshadow, let's be honest. So there is that. And then this one is the last of my minis, Viseart Petite Pro 5 Soleil. And yeah, this one's not going anywhere. This one is so pretty. And also these pans can come out as well, so I can move them around. At the end of the day, when these shadows are gone, I can fill them with another shadow and repress another shadow into these pans, whatever that looks like. But this palette is so pretty, so summery, and absolutely not going anywhere. So that's it for the palettes that were in my drawer because they are my mini palette. I'm decluttering 5 mini palettes, and that is going to open up some room in my drawer, honestly, for mini palettes. Not that I ever like typically will bring in a lot of mini palettes, but these are truly like 5 palettes that weren't seeing really any use in my palette collection. And that leaves 40 mini palettes that I need to put back in the drawer. So there were 45 palettes. I'm getting rid of 5. I'm keeping 40. So that is the end. How did I do? I did already film an inventory video that is just about the numbers in the spreadsheets and how I log everything. I will have that available to you in the cards, as well as my year of empties video, which talked about all the empties that I had last year. So you also get to see what exited my inventory. What do you think about my collection so far? I would be interested to hear from you down in the comment section. With that said, if you like collection videos, I'm doing a whole bunch more of them, I do think. If you're interested, don't forget to subscribe before you go. Like, I've been on YouTube for a while. There's plenty of videos out there. I'm sure that you can find something that you enjoy. I just hope that you loved it. I hope that you want to subscribe before you go. I hope that we can be friends at the end of the day. I'm super thankful that you were here today. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you and yours are well. I hope that you are all safe and healthy and getting along as best you can. I hope that you are all loving each other, but loving each other from afar. And until next time, bye friends.